How many times has it happened that you start studying motivated, but after a while, the 2-hour lecture you intended to watch ends up taking you 4, 5, or even an entire day to complete? Do you know why this happens? It's because your reading and learning speed is very slow. But don't worry. There are 3 steps that can help you drastically increase your reading and learning speed within the next 7 days. Hi everyone, welcome to Wikowins, a mentor to thousands of students. I've seen many students who study less but score very high marks, and others who study a lot but can't achieve the same results. Do you know why? It's because some students have a very fast reading and learning speed, while others have a very slow one, which leads to lower marks in exams. So, it's essential to increase your learning and reading speed. Let me explain this with a simple example. I've brought some problems that you might relate to. The first problem is that studying takes too much time. How often have you sat down with your notes but found yourself reading the same page over and over without anything actually sinking in? If this happens to you, it means your reading and learning speed is slow. The second point is a lack of focus. Many times our focus wanders when we try to study. We sit down to study, but our focus shifts here and there. And the third and most important issue is that watching lectures takes a lot of time. There are so many students who open a 2-hour lecture, watch it at x speed or 1.5x speed, but still take a whole day to finish it. If this happens to you, it's because your reading and learning speed is too slow. Now, you might be thinking, what does reading speed mean? By reading speed, I mean your ability to read and understand something quickly. But don't worry, I'm going to share 3 steps with you. Follow these 3 steps for the next 7 days and all your problems will be solved. Let me explain each step one by one. The first step is to strengthen your reading power. How can you do that? Let me explain with an example. Imagine 2 students, Rohit and Mohit. Rohit, whenever he reads a sentence, says it out loud. Rohit has 2 apples. But Mohit, who is smart, reads in his mind without saying it out loud. Let's do a quick activity together. First, say this line out loud. Rohit has 2 apples. It took some time, right? Now, say it in your mind. Rohit has 2 apples. It took much less time, didn't it? And that's our first point. Your brain processes information faster than you can speak.
Many students make the mistake of thinking that reading out loud will help them remember better because they were taught to do so in their childhood. But that's not effective anymore. When you were a child, reading out loud was good, but now you're older, about to take board exams or competitive exams, and you need to study smartly. Smart study means reading silently in your mind, which saves time and allows you to read more quickly. However, when you feel sleepy, you can read out loud to wake yourself up. This is because when we read out loud, it stimulates blood circulation, which helps to overcome sleepiness. But many students have a problem staying focused. Their hands might wander to their mobile phones, or they get distracted. For this, I'll share a technique called the fingertip method. When reading, use a pen, pencil, or your finger to follow along with the line you're reading. This technique, which we were taught as children, helps maintain focus on the words and prevents distraction. So, that was step 1, which will help increase your reading speed. Now, let's move on to step 2, use your senses. It's very important. Many students have a problem where they forget what they've studied after a while. Do you know why this happens? It's because you're not using the correct method to remember things. Let me explain with an example. Think of the candy melody. Even if I don't show you its picture, you can instantly imagine its color and taste, right? How does this happen? It's because when you ate that candy, you engaged all your senses touching the wrapper, tasting it with your mouth. This stored the memory of the candy in your long-term memory. But when we study, we often just read the text without engaging other senses, making it difficult for our brain to retain the information. The solution is simple. Keep a rough notebook with you while studying and jot down what you're learning. This engages multiple senses. Your eyes see the text, your brain processes it, and your hand writes it down. Scientific studies suggest that writing while reading helps store information in your brain more effectively. Another important point is to prevent boredom while studying. Our brains get bored when things don't change, unlike in games where graphics and challenges are constantly updated. To keep your brain active, change your study environment or posture occasionally. If you study in one place today, try studying while walking tomorrow, or sit in a different spot. This strategy, similar to how games keep you engaged, can make studying more enjoyable. Now, let's move on to step 3, short-term revision. No student can remember everything in one go. If you think there's a student in your class who studies only the night before the exam and still tops, they're probably lying. No one can retain everything in one sitting because our brain follows a process. Imagine you studied something today.
You'll remember 100% of it now, but after just 2 hours, 20% of that data will fade, and you'll remember only 80%. After 1 or 2 days, this 80% will drop to 30%, and within a week, it'll reduce to 10%. So, that was step 1, which will help increase your reading speed. Now, let's move on to step 2. Use your senses. It's very important. Many students have a problem where they forget what they've studied after a while. Do you know why this happens? It's because you're not using the you'll remember 100% of it now, but after just 2 hours, 20% of that data will fade, and you'll remember only 80%. After 1 or 2 days, this 80% will drop to 30%, and within a week, it'll reduce to 10%. So, what's the solution? The solution is short-term revision. It's a very effective method. When you come back from tuition or coaching or finish an online class, revise what you learned that day. This way, your memory, which had dropped to 80%, will go back up to 100%, and it will be stored in your long-term memory. If you spend just 10 to 20 minutes revising every day, all the information will be stored in your long-term memory, and you won't need to keep revisiting it. But following this method can be tough because it requires you to dedicate 15 to 20 minutes to revision every day. If you're willing to do this, write in the comments right now. Yes, I will follow this for the next 7 days. I'm giving you a challenge. If you want to achieve something big in life, start today by writing, yes, I will follow this for the next 7 days. After 7 days, you'll see a noticeable improvement in your reading and learning speed. Come back and tell me in the comments how it worked for you. Now, a final tip: study alone if you want to stay focused. I've seen many students who do group studies, but group studies can reduce focus. Group studies are good for revision or when preparing for tests, but when you're trying to learn and memorize something, it's better to study alone. When you're alone, your focus is 100% on the task, allowing you to remember more information in less time. A study was conducted with 50 students who studied in groups and 50 students who studied alone. The students who studied alone were able to remember things more easily and in less time, whereas the students who studied in groups took almost double the time. That's why I suggest you start studying alone. On that note, these were the 3 steps. I hope they help you and that you've already commented, yes, I will follow this for the next 7 days. After 7 days, come back and tell me in the comments whether this helped you or not. Thank you, everyone.